It's time for your Talk Time Live exclusive.
You are now about to witness the strength of geek knowledge.
Ladies and gentlemen, returning for his fifth appearance on the show is a guest with many titles, including writer, producer, executive producer, showrunner, and actor. You have seen his work on Marvel and DC Comics, as well as shows such as Magnum PI, In the Heat of the Night, Ultimate Spider-Man, Avengers Black Panther's Quest, one of my favorites, and recently the co-executive producer of the spinoff to Power known as Book 2, Ghost, starring Method Man and Mary J. Blige. He is the one and only Geoffrey Thorne, and he is here to talk about his latest work on the Green Lantern series and much more. Jeff, welcome back to the show, and first time seeing you since 2017.
Hey, thank you, man. Glad to be here as always. We've all been through it. It's been a long, strange little trip. I take no responsibility for the last year and a half. Okay. And really the last 4 years, because damn. But yeah, man. Thank you.
So I was very surprised. You really surprised me because, I mean, you always surprise me. I mean, you got different projects that always come in and you're working on and they're huge. And I'm like, what the hell is going on here? And this time around, it's, the announcement that you were going to be working with DC Comics this time to write a new Green Lantern series. I immediately brought the book, read it, and was very entertained and shocked by the story and the saga. Okay. So before we get really deep on that, can you talk about what led you to this new project with DC?
Yeah, I mean, I wish it was a really exciting story. Everybody knows I love comics out here in Hollywood land. I have thousands and thousands and thousands of comics I've been collecting for decades, like since I was a child. I'm now 50 plus, so a long time. I still have basically every comic book I ever bought. And a friend of mine called me up and he's like, DC Comics is doing some kind of outreach. They're looking for new blood, basically. Yeah. Your name came up. Is it somebody? Would you be interested in something like that? And I'm like, what, are you stupid? Yes, of course I would be interested in something like that. So I met with Dan DiDio. They had the whole big project. He was the editor in chief at the time. Yeah. And they had this whole big giant project that they were in the middle of that I didn't know anything about called 5G. He told me all about that. And he's like, so what do you got for me? And I pitched him about, 10 or 11 short stories. Short subjects, like no ongoing series, because I think that's, most freelancers don't try to pitch something like that because it's presumptuous. Right. Like, you don't know that book's going to last. You better pitch them 4 or 6 books and hope they do well. Right. So that's what I did. And he's like, oh, I like that story about John Stewart you pitched. And I was like, really? That's the one you like? Well, because it was weird. And I was like, I just pitched it because when are you ever going to get a chance to pitch that?
Right.
Again? But I didn't expect him to that be the one he chose. I pitched him some really cool stuff and he went for that, which I was like, all right, cool, bet. And then he got fired 2 weeks later.
Jeez.
And yeah, so I was like, all right, well, I guess that's the end of that story. I don't expect to hear from DC again because I figured the new person coming in wouldn't want to hear from any of the old people.
Right.
Like they want to get their own people. So they called me up about a month later, said, hey, we're still interested in that story. You want to talk about it? And I was like, sure. And then they laid out a whole bunch of stuff I can't say about what they wanted to do with the Green Lantern, just how they were going to publish it. And it was going to be me and a bunch of other writers. At least 2 other writers were going to be on the project with me. And I was still basically going to just be telling the John Stewart story. And I was like, cool, this sounds great, working with these big names. And, I'm from the comic book point of view, I'm the new guy. So
right.
This is great. It's going to put a lot of eyes on the project. Cool. And then one by one, they all started backing out for different reasons. Nothing that I know anything about, by the way.
Right.
I'm just writing. Like I'm writing out my outlines and doing all my stuff. And at one point, DC editorial came to me and said, look, the others are out. They have different commitments. They thought they could do it, but they can't. And, so how would you feel about just writing the whole book? And I was like, what? So, because like, that's a big job, man. Like that's like a commitment. And yeah. I had not pitched them a whole book.
Mhm.
But I was like, I don't have a story for a whole book yet. Like I have a story for John, just John,
Right.
for a few issues, but I don't have anything for all of the Green Lantern.
Right.
And they're like, well, think up some stuff. By the way, you definitely have to get rid of the power battery. And we'd like you to use Joe Mullane from Forest Sector and this other character, Teen Lantern. And I was like, what the hell is a Teen Lantern? Right? And they're like, you don't know about Teen Lantern? And I'm like, I thought you were just making a joke. That's real? Right? And they're like, no, that's real. Bendis made her up. And I was like, oh, okay. So I went and did research on her. And I was like, yeah, cool, I can use them. You better please check with N.K. Jemisin to see if it's okay that I take anything to do with that beautiful character she created. And they're like, are you serious? And I was like, look, I'm not trying to get a wrong side of a writer that's better than me. You better go check with her. So she said, cool, let the man do his thing. Well, I guess not everybody does that because they were genuinely shocked. But they did check with her. Apparently she said, I'm cool with it, do your thing. I said what I had to say with the character. Right. Mm-hmm. And so that's how that happened. And I was like, well, okay, well, here's how I think the DC cosmic side works, right? Not necessarily what you guys have already established, but for me, the only way it could really work the way you've been showing it in the books all this time is this. So I wrote them a document basically called DC Cosmic, right? Mm-hmm. Starting with the source,
right,
and just trickling all the way down to street level characters that were not cosmic. And they're like, we like all of these works. So can you use the Green Lantern book to sort of set some of this up? And I was like, yeah, if you want to, it's your thing. You agree with all of this? Because a lot of it's from the audience point of view, they might not agree with some of it. It's a person who's been thinking about this for a while.
Right.
But some of the stuff, there are giant cracks that I'm filling. No one's ever filled them before. So all the fans will have their own notions about what should go in those cracks. And now you're going to tell them what goes in those cracks.
Right.
And they're like, do your thing. Look, if we want to reshuffle the deck, all bets are off anyway. So if there's another crisis on Infinite Earths, everything you do is going to get erased anyway. So just have fun. And if it sticks, it sticks. And if it doesn't, so what? And I was like, I like your attitude. Great. So started doing that. And then they came back to me a little while later and said, so we're going to do this future state thing. We need you to participate in it. And I was like, I don't know what the hell is future state. And they were like, well, we're going to jump. All the books are going to jump forward either a few years or a lot of years.
Right.
And we want you to do that with Green Lantern. And I was like, yeah, but remember the story you approved for me? You know what happens in a few years in this Green Lantern book? It's not going to look like a Green Lantern book if we jump more than a few weeks.
Right.
Because after the first year, it just won't look like a Green Lantern book. And they're like, yeah, bet, do that. And I was like, oh, okay. So I was like, okay, it's going to be a lot of Road Warrior type stuff. And they're like, yeah, do that Mad Max Green Lantern. And I was like, oh, okay, great. Right. So that's what you got in the future state, the double future state side. And then we came back, and it's obviously back to the present day where none of that stuff has happened. And because of the way the book is set up, it looks like it's in two sides.
Right.
Like the first two issues, everybody's together, but by the end of the second issue, we get rid of the battery, and Joe comes back from the far sector,
right,
and all hell is broken loose.
So, it blew my mind too, because like I was like, I can't believe everything's going into turmoil here. You got this intergalactic summit that was supposed to be led for peace, and it turns into political turmoil after the horrific events. I don't want to spoil it, even though it's been out for quite some time.
Right.
But it's crazy that, things happen, major things happen in the development of this. And now there's turmoil within the Green Lantern Corps, and almost to the point that there's almost no more Corps.
Well, one of the things I, as a fan, was like, when they said you're going to blow up the battery, I say blow up, destroy. Right.
That's pretty,
I was like, well, I'm like, well, you've done that before. And they're like, we need to do it for this other larger thing we're doing. It needs to happen. And I was like, all right, cool. But if we're going to do it, I want to do it my way. So one of the things that you would normally do in a story about the battery eventually blowing up, especially if the audience has had it leaked to them and they know it's coming, you want to draw that out, right? You want to keep writing a book where there's no blown up battery, because every issue, right? Are they going to do it this week? And I was like, I don't want to do all of that. If we're going to do it, let's just get to it. right? I don't want to make the book about waiting for the I don't
Wait,
want
the
to make the
slow
book about,
burn. Yeah.
yeah, I don't want to do that. Let's just get to it, right? Because what's really interesting about that isn't the battery blowing up, it's what that causes.
Yeah.
Like when it goes away. So we did that. The other thing I wanted to set up, which wasn't mine, was in the Superman and Justice League book, Superman's son, John Kent, had inspired all these warring planets and solar system societies, whatever, who are normally at each other's throats. He'd invited them to start a sort of the United Nations. And they were doing that over in these other books. And I was like, well, these are the cosmic cops over here. So if that's happened over here, we have to take note of it in this book, right? How would we do that, right? In the DC history of in comics of history, in their science fiction side, they kind of play very fast and loose with the size of the universe, what the universe actually is, how big is a galaxy? Like people act like they know, but the scale that we're talking about, there's the number of Green Lanterns that they've said, which is 7,200, that couldn't cover one galaxy. That's not enough for one in a real universe. That's not enough to cover one galaxy, even if you're moving it faster than light speeds. People just, the human mind cannot picture the actual distances involved. Like your brain can't do it. Right. So in the comics, they're like, oh, these people are in this other galaxy, or this whole galaxy over here is run by this guy. And I'm like, no, it's not. That's not possible. Look, that's not how any of this works. Right. So, so what I kind of fudged it. And so the United Planets isn't just the Milky Way galaxy, because DC has established that some of these species are in whole other galaxies, and yet they're forming the United Planets. So I was like, okay, fine. We don't have to make a big deal of it. But where is Oa? Oa is claimed to be the center of the universe. That's nonsense. There's nothing at the center of the universe, because the universe was started by a big bang, which means that's the middle of the explosion, which means there's no planet sitting there. That's nonsense. Everything is away from there, right? So what it is it's sort of, they've decided they're like the moral center of the universe, right? But the guardians of the universe in the DCU have been kind of the only force for justice for 1 billion years, like all over this space. They've been sending out first the Manhunters, which that went very badly. And then they have the Green Lanterns, which everyone calls the cosmic cops, but they're more like peacekeepers. They're not like, they don't have law enforcement powers. They have keep the peace powers. So,
Coast Guards.
Right. They're like, right. Or referees, Coast Guard, lifeguard, that's their job. And they come in and rescue if your planet's on fire, like whatever. But, but they don't have
galactic essential workers.
Right. They're not rescuing you. They're not arresting you and taking you to some court where the guardians sentence you after some lawyer argues. They don't do any of that. Right. And there's some people they do in prison, but that's like somebody who's so nakedly evil and toxic that we're the only people who can handle you. We need to put you in this vault because you're running around here eating up sons. You need to go in this vault. Right. Like what lawyer is going to defend? Right. But I wanted to mess with that. And like, so Oa, the guardians have to say, are we in, or are we out of this whole United Planets thing? And also, I don't know what people think, but nobody elected these fools. Nobody said, I agree, you can run around policing the whole universe, whatever.
Right.
You say that.
And I like that you put a focus on that too.
Yeah. Nobody asked us whether we wanted you to be policing us. Who the hell are you?
That's that's the ongoing situation and question that always falls in with any like major group in comics too.
Yeah. So like, it's one thing when you have a street level vigilante, because you can have the cops chasing after him and you're actually breaking the law. Batman, everything Batman does is illegal. Like 100% of what he does is illegal unless he's a deputy of the court.
Yeah.
Right. Which he is absolutely not. So he's just a straight up criminal. You guys can eat it. Sorry, he's a criminal. Right. But the Green Lanterns have a different thing where they have so much power. Who can say boo to them?
Yeah.
Right. Nobody. So now all these planets are unified, and they're like, we haven't decided whether we want your Green Lanterns around. We haven't decided whether we want any of you guys messing with us anymore. Yeah. So are you going to join this club? And if you are going to join this club, see those rules on the wall? Those are the rules you follow. Can you live like that with us? Because it's all or nothing. Either you're in by these rules, or we don't want to see any Green Lantern.
Sounds like every Facebook group on social media.
Right. And surprise, surprise, the Guardians are like, no, that's fair. You're not wrong. We're not the rulers of this cosmos. We're not your bosses. We're just the oldest. We're like the oldest brother, oldest sister. We don't have the rights we've assumed. And if you guys feel like you're ready to drive the car, feel free to drive the car. We will not do anything. And then obviously some tragedy happens and messes all that up. But the whole point was, what I was trying to do was make the audience think about, one, what is it to be? What is this? How does this all work? How is it all set up? So you have to have some of that, but also to put in their minds that there's a lot that's been going on in the DC universe that you guys don't put together. But if the audience doesn't, but if the Green Lanterns do what you claim they do, what the company has claimed they do, they have to know about all this stuff. And the Guardians, the leaders of the Green Lanterns, for those who don't know, they've done some pretty dastardly stuff over the billions of years that they've been in charge of all this. They've caused literally horrible holocausts of death, either on purpose sometimes, which is really bad, or by accident, where they were trying to do something good and it just got out of hand. And it's like, okay, we're sorry we wiped out your solar system. Sorry about it. We're just going to step back in the lab and try. It's
like the Flash or the Legends of Tomorrow, who always ends up in time and screwing it up, no matter how their intentions are.
Like, don't touch anything. Don't go back in time. What? The last cataclysm didn't train you, idiots. Don't do this anymore, right? But then, no, I figured it out. We can do it again, right? Like, oh my God, these Guardians.
Did we not tell you the first time? Did you not remember?
We told you like 8,000 times to stop meddling with this stuff. Well, we don't have to listen to you because we're the oldest. You guys know what you're talking about, right? So finally, some Guardian said, you know what? You're right. Right. But one of the ugly things the Guardians did, which people have been glossing over since I was a kid, they took half the magic out of the universe. They don't like magic, so they got rid of as much as they could.
I'm sure Superman is very happy about that.
Yeah, but the magicians aren't, right? Like I'm sitting here doing my simple magic trick on my little planet, and these fools came in and sucked all the potential magic out of the universe. Like nobody asked me. I wasn't hurting anybody. Yeah, but in like 6,000 years, your descendant might be able to, dude, I'm just trying to make water, right? I just figured a way to turn natural air into water, and you just stripped my ability to do that because you felt like it, because you don't like it. Who in the hell are you?
Now,
who are you to do that?
Now, as you say that, and then this is my next question too, because there was, to me, reading it, I felt there was a few things in the narrative that was very relevant, sort of kind of to real world situations and current society. By chance, were there any influences that you took out of that? Okay,
some people have been saying that, and I don't tell them no, because when you read a comic book, hopefully one is well written. I don't know if I'm not saying I'm so great, but if a writer writes something well, if it's authentic, then you're going to be able to lift out stuff that's in there, but that they didn't put in there.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it's not in there. So when I've seen a couple of articles written now where people are talking about how I'm addressing Black Lives Matter and defund the police and all that kind of stuff. I'm not. Straight up, I was not trying to do that. Right. What I was trying to do was tell the story of a gigantic quasi police force that has immense powers and has agreed to reshuffle its own deck. Right? Nobody could make the Guardians stand down. They chose to agree because they're like, no, that's a fair argument. We're going to step back. And what we didn't talk about before, right? They took away a whole bunch of the Green Lanterns, like jurisdiction. They were like, you're not allowed to do this. You're not allowed to operate here anymore. We're going to reassign a bunch of you now. We're just restructuring everything, right? According to this new agreement, because we want to be a good member of this new group. We don't want to pretend like we're part of the group, but still be the big bullies in the group. Right. So we're going to do that. And there was some consternation about that. And some people said he's obviously doing this. And I'm like, I'm never doing that, guys. When I'm writing comics, what I'm trying to do is write authentically.
Right.
So if you're writing about these kinds of situations, then yes, some of that's going to come up. And there's only going to be a couple of solutions to certain kinds of problems.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Right. If you're dealing with an opponent that's stronger than you and a better fighter than you, then you better hope you got some good negotiation skills or a big ass gun.
Right.
Right? Because you're going to lose that fight unless the other person is reasonable.
Yeah.
Right? The other guy's reasonable. It doesn't matter how good a fighter he is. You won't need the gun because you're just going to be talking. So I decided the Guardians were reasonable. Like they could have been unreasonable and told the United Planets to go screw themselves.
But it would be
Remember Julie said-
uncharacteristic for them not to at the same time.
Right. They're trying to be good. They're trying to be good in the universe. So they would at least give this a shot. The other thing I thought was I was friends with Dwayne McDuffie, and Dwayne McDuffie had an IQ of 168, which most people don't know, or at least they ought to know by now because I say it enough. But he's a straight up real genius, like Bill Gates figure. Like, I don't know what Bill's IQ is. 168 is like off the charts.
Yeah.
Okay. And I asked him one day, I'm like, I'm pretty smart. Like, I'm above average. I'm well above average. And sometimes I'll be in a room with people and I'm like, God, these people are stupid. Jesus Christ, can they shut up for five? God damn. Right? Like, stop talking. Please stop talking before I kill you. Right? And I'm like, but that's just me with an above average intelligence. You have an intelligence that's ridiculous, which means even guys like me must look like freaking morons to you. Like, are you always in a room full of 5-year-olds? Like, is everybody in a room like a room full of 5-year-olds? What the hell is that like? And he said, one, yes. And I said, what the hell is that like? He's like, I laugh a lot. I laugh a lot. And I was like, yeah, you do. Now I know why you're smiling all the time, right? Because we're just idiots. He's like, I'm not answering that, son. But I feel like that's the guardians of the universe. They're the oldest, they're the smartest, they're the most accomplished, they've done everything, they've seen everything, and they're just trying to keep the kids from putting their hands on a hot stove. Yeah. That's their whole thing, right? So if the kids are now old enough that they can drive their own car, you kind of got to let them. Yeah. Right? You got to let them and see what happens. It's like nothing you do is going to hurt us. We're immortal. We're indestructible, theoretically. And so let's see how this plays out, basically. Let's go with it. So that's what it was.
I can tell you this, I am all in on this journey. I'm really much enjoying it now. When can you talk us through the feeling, and I'm surprised I never asked you just the last 4 times, but can you talk us through the feeling that you get when you see your written work transition into the form of comic book panels or animation or even live action scenes? How does
There's nothing better. There's no better feeling to me. Like, well, let me put it to you like this. Right on my desk right now is next week's issue of Green.
Oh,
okay. So like, I write it and I'm happy. And
how fast can you FedEx that to me?
Stop it. I could draw a little bit. So I kind of know in a way, I kind of know what the pictures are going to look like, sort of. But all the artists are so much better than me that I'm genuinely always pleasantly surprised when I see them. And when the first line art comes back, that's just the black and white drawing. Right. I'm just like, damn. Right. But it still doesn't really look like a comic book yet. It's still more like, wow, this guy can really draw. And this guy can really draw. Wow, I'm nowhere near this good. Oh my God. Right. And then we get a thing called a proof, which has all the colors and letterings in it, which is essentially a PDF of the comic book before it comes out. And it's a comic book. And my test for the rest of the team is if their work makes me forget I wrote it, if I'm just suddenly just reading it, right? Which you think wouldn't happen, but it actually does. I've been lucky enough to work with Kari Randolph and Emilio Lopez on Mosaic, and now the 3 artists, Dexter, Tom, and Marco on this one. I'm not leaving out the colorists, but I'll get their names wrong, and I don't want to screw it up. Mike Atier. Mike Atier is our current and awesome colorist. And when the work comes back fully realized, I'm sitting there going, damn, what's going to happen next? Better turn the page, you know? And I know what's going to happen next. I wrote it, but it's like amazing. It's truly amazing. And then I tell you what, the best day of every month is when I get that box of copies they send to the writer. Like, I just like, damn, let me read this comic that I wrote 3 months ago. Like, you know, let me stop everything.
That's also great too, because like you're out of sight, out of mind for a while, and you're already working on other things, and you just pushing it through. So when that comes back to you, you do get. I can empathize with you on that, and you just get that. I don't want to say vindication or it's more like satisfaction.
Yeah, and plus, I love this stuff. I grew up with this stuff. What little kid doesn't either want to write or draw comics if they love comics? At some point, they try it. At some point, everybody who loves comics tries drawing some. Everybody, right? And not everybody tries writing them, but I would say basically everybody who's into comics at some point drew some version of some page of a
In
comic
some way, yes.
or a superhero or something. And I feel like I'm crazy lucky that, and a little bit stupid because it's a lot of work for not as much money as I normally make, like not even close to as much money as you would normally make, but I really just love it. So
It's that passion.
when I get to, well, I love comics in a very specific way. The part of me that gets fulfilled by comics is very different than if I wrote a novel or what we do on a TV show or something like that. There's a sort of little kernel of a decent, nice little boy in there that just freaking loves comics. And he's giggling all the time I'm writing. That little boy is just sitting there giggling, go, oh my God, what's gonna, shut up. I'm not, you gotta wait till the end of the story. Shut up. You know, just read it. Just read it. Stop talking to me. Right? Like that. And that's the fun of it. So I'm having a good time. I'm trying to do a story that hasn't been told this way before. Not just because of who it's focused on, but also what it is. Right? This year also, Chris Cross, the amazing artist Chris Cross, I was on Twitter and I made some crack about, hey, I thought about this character Vixen. I had a weird thing I woke up with this morning where I got this idea about how her powers might work that might like totally change the game on her. And he was like, really? Now, I don't know Chris that well. Like we have some interaction. Yeah. We have some Twitter conversations. So he follows me, I follow him. And his first thing was, really? And I was like, Chris, I did not tell you what the idea was. I just said I had one. He's like, cool, I'm gonna call my editor. And I was like, there's nothing to call your editor about, Chris Cross. There's no idea. There's only an idea for how her powers might work, not a story. I don't have a story. And still, you don't even know what the idea is yet. It might be dumb. He's like, too late, already called him. And I was like, oh, what are you doing to me? So I figured it was a joke. He was just sort of clowning me. But no, I got an email from the editor the next morning. So what's Chris talking about? And I was like, Chris is talking about nothing because he doesn't know what the idea is, right? And he's like, well, let's tell us what the idea is. And I said, well, I think Vixen's power work like this. Powers work like this. And they're like, oh, that's dope. So what's the book? And I was like, there's no book. It's just an idea about how her powers work. He's like, well, could you come up with an idea in the next couple of weeks? I was like, I mean, he's like, okay, call me back next week. And I was like, oh my God.
Jeez.
Right. And I was like, nothing in my life has ever been that easy. So I emailed Chris and I'm like, well, I'm thinking about this with the Global Guardians and stuff. He's like, I love the Global Guardians. And I'm like, even better, just design some stuff, man, because I'm not going to use the original Global Guardians. I'm going to mess around with them a bit. And I love your art style. So this is a place where you can just flex, redesign that costume on Vixen, redesign these Global Guardians as we need them, right? Like as they show up, we're going to redesign them. Right. And he's like, cool, let's go. And that turned into Truth and Justice #1. Right. And I was just like, what? But again, I got to work with somebody who I had written letters to when he was at Milestone. Like, so am I having a good time? Yeah. Do I even care whether the book sells or not? Nope. Nope.
Let me follow up with this question. When you act, do you get inspired more based on the artists that you're working with? Like if you per se just happen to work with Jim Lee by chance, does that inspire you to write more? Or
well,
write something you just be more inspired to like?
It depends on how the book comes about. Sometimes the story's already in my head and I pitch it full out to the company. So I already know the whole story. And then the fun is really watching the artist come in and just like make a meal of it, right? But what I will do in that situation is once I see how and what the artist really likes to draw, like they just flex a lot, or like, oh damn, they're really good at, you know, intimate scenes where people are talking, but they know how to do all the acting and the shadows. And so all of a sudden that story that we're definitely going to tell, but the way I tell it in this issue might be more of that instead of what I thought of before. Or you have an artist that does really great, like giant sequences of fighting, where it's a person like in The Raid, where it's just one dude fighting all these people through a house. I'm going to write some stuff that really lets that artist flex. Right. But there's another way, which is sort of the way I worked with Chris Cross, which was there was no real idea at the beginning. It was like he really wanted to draw it. So part of my conversation was, what do you want to draw, man? Yeah. Like, what do you feel like doing? He's like, well, I got some design notions I'd love to play around with. And I was like, do they work for this kind of a story? He's like, oh yeah, multiple characters, and I really love those characters. I'm like, well, I was thinking about using Impala. He's like, cool, I got something for Impala. What do you think about this? So we're going back and forth about what will he look like, and I'm saying, oh, that's interesting, because that helps me with this. Right. That helps me figure out how his powers now work, and it gave me a plot point in the story, which I didn't need to know that yet. But basically, in that story, I say, the kind of magic that Vixen has and the kind of magic that Impala has is totemic, which is it comes from an object that lends them power of some kind. And the beings that they're fighting are totems. Mm-hmm. So that makes them immune to their magic. Whereas Superman, who is not a totemic powerhouse, he would be not immune at all to exactly the same threat, which would make him very dangerous because it could take him over and use him. But it can't do that to Impala or Vixen, which gives them a reason to be. That's why they are the ones who have to fight. They're the ones to team up, blah, 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 right? And then I bring in the Olympian, who's also a totemic hero. She wears the golden fleece. Mm-hmm. So all of her powers come from the golden fleece. So again, the bad guys cannot take over her mind because he's already got a totem. You can't push that totem out and have it be you, right? So all of that came from conversation with Chris, right? So the story had a loose shape, but the characters were not set. Points in the story didn't exist until I saw some of his drawings. So it was much more of a back and forth. And like on Green Lantern, the story is very much shaped already before the artist got brought in. And I hope they do, if they let me keep my same team, the better I get to know these guys, the more input I'm going to ask for from them. Right. What would you like to draw? How do you think this would look? Or I'll write in the description, doesn't matter what they look like, you have a ball, just don't let them look like humans. Right. Right. And then when I see what you do, I might make some changes to my dialogue to suit, like if I thought they were big angel wing people, but you made them look like bugs, then I will change the dialogue to suit that. But the story doesn't change. Right. So that's the different ways. And then I work with my best friend on books together. And that whole thing just starts out with like, I'm sick of writing this kind of stuff because I'm working on this TV show all the time. And I know you've been drawing all this other stuff. Like, what are you sick of drawing? Right? Like, I'm really sick of drawing horses. I'm like, all right, no horses in this book. What do you really feel like drawing? You know what I've been feeling like drawing is like King Arthur and his knight. Cool. All right, let me think of if I can come up with a story for that. Right? And then I pitch him the story. He's like, okay, cool. But could it be set like underwater? And I'm like, why? You know what I mean? He'll be like, because I want to draw some swimming underwater knights. And I'm like, all right, you know. And
you just work your way around it.
Right. And then you start coming up with something that is sort of more a joint thing. Yeah. Right. And then at some point he's like, okay, I'm going to go off and draw a whole bunch of characters. And I go off and write. He doesn't know what I'm writing. I don't know what he's drawing. We come back, sort of, okay, we can't use that character, but maybe this character could be the bad guy instead of the good guy. Yeah. Oh, what's that thing? Oh, that just doodled that. Yeah, well, that's going to be the big monster at the end. So make a big version of that, right? What about this plot point? I thought we were going to do it underwater. It is underwater, but the castle's made out of coral. See, he's like, no. What about this? Right? And I'll be like, oh, cool. Make it out of seaweed and like, what? Okay, cool. Right? It doesn't change the story, but it makes him want to flex. Yeah. I think a lot of what you want to do as a writer in comics is give the artist something that isn't boring to them, because their job is long-term. They're sitting there with this piece of paper. You know, I've written things where they have a cast of thousands, and I feel bad for the artists because they got to draw all those people. Yeah. Like those thousands, you got to draw them. So I could just write, and there's a cast of thousands. There was that 4 words, but the artist has to draw thousands of people, right? So you want to keep that kind of stuff to a minimum, unless you can tell the artist can sink their teeth into that, where they're like, yeah, give me a giant Game of Thrones fight. I love that. All right, cool. Right. This is going to be a conversation, but they can have it in the middle of a Game of Thrones fight just as easily as a cafe. So, you know what I mean? So that's what you feel like, man. Right. You know, so it's more like that. I try to be a team player, unless it's a creator-owned property. And even then, I like to let the artist flex. I don't want them to be bored because I'm not paying them what they deserve or can afford to. So I try to write stuff that they, oh, damn, I get to draw this. I never had that. Nobody ever asked me to draw Inca Temple before. Cool. Right. On the inside, damn, you know, like, so stuff like that. But yeah, for Green Lantern, it's still very much me, only because of the way it got pitched and the way it got built up. But even with that, and I always stress this. There's a lot of things I write in my scripts that I'm like, okay, they look like this. Good character. There's a character called Eurydice in the Green Lantern. She's a magical princess type, right? And I said, so this is a magical princess, an evil magical Disney princess, but if she was made out of water, right? If her whole body was made out of water and she has a crown of little stars floating around her head. That's it, right? Dexter Soy designed that character. I did not know what she looked like, did not care what she was going to look like exactly. I just knew that she was going to look like, I'm surprised when I see what they do, which is what I want, right? I want to feel like I'm reading a comic book. So that's how I try to work with the artists. I don't want to tax them too much, but when I do, I want it to matter. And
give them some leeway to be expressive. Yeah.
And if it's a lot of heavy lifting, like a cast of thousands, I want that sequence to really matter. It's not just because I feel like, oh, we're on the street in New York, draw every face on the street. Yeah. Like, I don't want to be that guy.
What I like about that idea is that you're not putting pressure on the artist, and it's a fluidity of creativity that you guys are, working together in. So there's no pressure, there's no stressors going on right there.
You hope for that. And then I did this thing for Marvel. I think it was a 10-pager with Jan Baldzura. What do you call it? A Brazilian artist.
Yeah.
And she's amazing. So I wrote this very simple story about the Prowler and his girlfriend getting attacked by symbiotes. And when I saw that art come back, I was like, girl, you're not drawing an X book. You don't have to go crazy like this. This is insane. Like, I would have been happy with like a third of this level. Right. Like, she drew that book like she was auditioning to draw the main X-Men #1.
She wants a permanent series, and she showed it.
She was like, I don't care. This is an X book as far as I'm concerned. Like, I was like, I mean, okay, you want the artist to be happy, because the happy artist draws amazingly well.
Absolutely.
Right.
You tell no lies.
Right. So that's basically my philosophy. Right. It's project specific.
So let's talk last year when you came on the show. Okay. You gave the greatest news ever, because you announced that you will be working on the spinoff to the ever popular Power.
Yeah.
Entitled Book 2 Ghost, starring Method Man and Mary J. Blige.
Yeah, and they just dropped book 3, Raising Kanan just dropped.
Yeah, exactly. So you are a part of that.
No.
You're okay. But
no, they were beginning
as you guys were going.
We were in the middle of our production run. Wow. We were actually shooting our show while they were building Raising Kanan. So we got to see all the prelim stuff, and now it's out.
But let me tell you, I watched the series, especially the episode that you wrote in particular. Like, for those who don't know, to see it in the beginning with Fiddy's like awesome intro music, and here your name pops up, and I'm looking at that like, that's Power.
Wow, man! I tell you what, I took a snapshot of that. I couldn't believe it either.
You should see. Wait till you see the graphic that I designed for your promo.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I love that. I loved every moment of that job. Courtney Kemp is amazing. She's an awesome woman. She's a great boss.
Let me tell you, I actually watched, like I said, I watched the series, especially the episode that you've written entitled Good versus Evil, which took me back to my days of psychology and philosophy classes, like discussing good, evil, and altruism in its totality here.
Yeah.
Especially that first scene when they were all in class. And I'm like, honestly, when that scene with the classroom and they were all talking about that subject, I wanted that whole entire episode to be like that. But I see where it was going from that whole entire time.
That's all Courtney, man. Like, that was when she first told me what she was planning to do with the show. Yeah, I was like, don't you know you're gonna make the show about Tariq? Right? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, do you know how people feel about Tariq out there? Right? And she's like, nobody knows better than me except maybe Michael, who plays Tariq. And I was like, and your plan is to make a whole show about the man that people send death threats to because they think the actor is really the guy? And she's like, we're going to turn the corner, Jeff. And I was like, I mean, okay, pirate captain, I'm with you, And damn it, she did the thing. Like, the whole first season had everybody not just not hating Tariq, they're on Team Tariq now.
Yeah.
Like everybody's with that kid. And I was like, okay, Courtney.
It was
okay.
like I watched that and I looked at like The Walking Dead when like Adrian, when she was there and everybody hated her, or King Joffrey on Game of Thrones. But they had to get rid of him. But on Walking Dead, I was like, there's no way of turning this character back around. They just offed her. But they did what those two other really popular shows could not do. And I, commend you all for, being able to do that.
All props to Courtney. All props to Courtney.
How was your experience on that show? And what did you think of the final cut of the entire season?
I loved it. I'd been sort of working in animation, used to before pre-pandemic. There was sort of a stigma working in animation, which I kept doing, and people were like, "Why do you keep doing that?" And I was like, "I like cartoons. That's why I keep
plain
doing
and simple."
Like, why do I write comics? Because I freaking like comics. And they're like, "There's no money in it." I'm like, "Are you worried about my bills more than me? I'm good. I'm all right. Leave me alone." Right. But the downside is, when we were doing the Black Panthers quest, I couldn't tell anybody I was doing the Black Panthers quest, so I was invisible. People thought I quit the business. Like straight up, I'm like, "You still in?" I was like, "Yeah, I got this comic. I got this show coming out. I'm show running it, whatever. What is it? Can't tell you." Like, really? I really can't tell you. Come on, man. You can say if you quit the business or not. You don't have to make up. So like, no, I promise you it's real. It's going to come out, whatever. So when I came back, some people were like, "Oh, I thought you quit." And God bless Courtney. She took a meeting with me when she didn't have to. Because who the hell was I? The last thing that she would have looked at on my resume would have been, he ran this Black Panther cartoon, right? Which in the old days, oh, he's a cartoon dude. Like, why would I even talk to him for my very hard-hitting, super sexy TV show? Like, why am I talking to this dude? Right? Well, at that time, Power was still on, and there was no one had said we're doing a spinoff. That was a huge secret, right? So me and Courtney sit in her office with her partners, and we just started geeking out about Avengers Endgame and how they did the Black Widow wrong. It should have been Hawkeye that went over the cliff. We did that for a half hour, right? And her partners were like, "We're trying to have a meeting in here. This is not Comic-Con," right? And like, I'm not kidding. And we just sort of bonded over it. She said, "So here's what's up, Jeff. We're going to spin off Power. Power's going to end this year." And I was like, "What?" And she's like, yeah, it's going to. I mean, how far can it go? Ghost has to die. Like, he can't survive the crap that he set up. He's got to actually die, right? But we want to keep going. The network wants to keep going. More than that, we're going to do 3 Power spinoffs. And I was like, "What?" Right? Like, how are you going to do all this? She's like, "We got a plan, but that's not important because you need to worry about those other ones. How would you like to be number 2 on Power Book 2 Ghost?" And that's when the whole thing I was like, "Well, what's it going to be if you're going to kill Ghost? How are you going to call the show Ghost?" She's like, "Well, Tariq's still alive." And I'm like, "Oh, dear God, you're going to make a show about Tariq?" Right? And then that's what that whole conversation was. But I'll tell you what, I was the only new guy, almost the only new guy. Everybody else on that staff had in one way or another been working in an organization all the way through Power. So they all knew that I was like coming and writing Star Trek or something. Like, they all knew all the lore, all the ins and outs, little things that the audience might not remember from an episode. They knew everything, right? So coming into that, it was like, so the big thing was, how are we going to do this? How are we going to fix this kid? And we started talking about, what is Tariq's life really like? Why would he be the way he is? How did he end up? Not just the stuff you show, but what would it be like to be Tariq? Like, it can't have been easy. Let's start there. Right. And that's when we found out, like, they were still making the final episode of Power had not come out yet. So we were seeing it as the cuts were coming through. So it changed how we did some of the stuff we were doing. Because we were seeing how the final form would look. It's one thing to know the story. It's another thing to go, oh, the audience isn't actually going to see some of the stuff that we know happened because it got cut out of the final cut. So now it didn't happen. So now we can do other stuff over here. Which characters are going to live, who we're going to bring into this new show, all that kind of stuff. And it was a great time. They taught me a lot of stuff about like modern pop culture, which I mostly don't pay attention to anymore, like, because it irritates me.
I was about to say, some of it is not even worth taking around.
For real though. But like, so we got to like, and I don't know some people, but like, I'm not a big sports head, so I don't know who that's a joke. I don't care about sports at all. So unless they have a TV commercial, or like it's in, like, unless you're in Space Jam, I don't know your name, man. I'm glad you're rich. You're richer than me. I don't know. I don't know anything about your life. Don't care, right? But they're all up in that. Obviously, they hit me to this thing called the Shade Room, which I'd never even heard of before, which has to be experienced to be believed. Just go and do yourself a little search on the Shade Room.
Right.
And all kinds of stuff about rap culture, which I used to be deep in, obviously, because I grew up with that, with hip hop. But the moderns, the 20-something, the teenager rappers, they're not talking about anything that I need to be hearing about.
Dude, my whole playlist is 90s.
Well, I'm not against them, but rap
Right.
changes, right? And different eras have different sounds,
different ideologies, and yeah,
right. And they're talking about different stuff. So it wasn't like I was against it, but I just didn't know. Like the only one I could really rattle off would be like Nicki Minaj or Cardi B.
the Drakes.
They were like,
yeah.
Right, Drake.
Yeah,
but yeah, and like, but they were talking about like the Baby, Megan Thee Stallion, people I had not, like, I might have heard the name but didn't have a voice to put with it, whatever. So I had to do this deep, like I literally took notes. They were talking like, who's that? Like, you guys talking about so and so, and they're beefing with so and so, blah blah blah. And I was like, I have no idea what that is. Let me write this down real quick and go check, right? And then I came back with like, okay, now I can talk about this stuff intelligently. There are some I don't like. But I'm not going to be like the old guy going, well, you kids back in my day, I just don't like it.
You find it harder to keep doing that every single time.
Yeah, but Megan Thee Stallion, she's the truth, though.
Yeah, she is.
Okay, and
she is a true fan of things too.
Well, she's the truth, though. Like I got so like, wow, this chick can blow. God damn, right? But all of her songs are basically about one subject. Yeah. So I started looking into the background of like interviews with her. Who is this chick? What's her deal? Right. And there's a couple of these shows where they have you do some bars, like off the top, right? Just, here's go, just spit, right? And I was like, why is she wasting her time with this nonsense on her albums? This is better than 100. This thing she just made up off the top of her head is better than every hit she's ever had.
Because it's not glorifying and selling records right, like the way the studios want.
Hey, yo, like for real though, like both her and Cardi B got asked the same question because every time they put out something that's racy, like there's always the contingent of somebody, male or female, going, you're just using sex to sell your work, right? That you're bringing women down, you're bringing the Black people down, you're bringing Puerto Rican people down with that. First of all, that's none of your damn business. If you don't like it, don't buy the album. Okay, that's first. But two, people ask them that in interviews, and both of them have a similar response, which is one, I forget which one said this. One is, obviously you didn't listen to my whole album.
Right.
If that's all you want to talk about, you didn't listen to my whole album, which leads me to the second point. The reason you didn't listen to the whole album is all you wanted to hear about was the sexy stuff. Whether you want to yell at me about it or not, the only thing you came there for was the sexy stuff. Same with Megan Thee Stallion, who is by far a massively better rapper than anyone knows. Okay, she's amazing, but she's hot. And that's what apparently sells her albums. Right. She's like, yeah, I could do it the way you want me to do it and be broke and never get anywhere and not have my career do anything at all. Not even just not as good as. I mean, zero.
Right.
Or I can sell these millions of albums I'm selling and live a decent life. So unless you got a solution that makes the audience gravitate to my political stuff, can you make them go by that? Because I'd be perfectly happy to sit here and lecture you about African-American history or whatever, Black history, or wet ass. Sorry about it.
Right.
Sorry about it.
It's actually, it's a shame because at the end of the day, the purists don't get paid.
Right.
You're
not gonna get. I'm trying to live, man. This is a job. I'm trying to make money, and one version gets me zero money, and one gets me millions and millions of dollars. And it's your choice whether you listen to it or not. I'm not hurting anybody, right? Adults understand what I'm talking about. If you got a 9-year-old listening to this,
let me rephrase that. Let me rephrase that. Let me help you rephrase it. Sophisticated adults.
Well, yes, that's true. There's people who are physically adults who are not very sophisticated. But I'm saying if you got an underage person listening to this stuff, that's bad parenting. That's not me as an artist who's responsible for your child.
Right. Absolutely.
Right. So I was like, okay, I'm with you, sis. Not worried about it anymore. Because I was a little concerned just as a person. I'm like, come on, ladies, really? Is it always every song? And now I know why. So I can't really get mad at it.
Right.
It's not like they're not putting that work out. It's just that's not what's getting promoted. Right. So, okay. So anyway, so they hit me to all that nonsense, and I was deep in that and having a good time. And then the casting started, and they got Meth, and they got Mary J. Blige, and I was just like, well, that's perfect for me. That's right in my age group. Like, I was like, holy crap, that's Wu-Tang Forever.
Icons of our era.
Yeah.
Of our era.
I had to keep making sure I didn't just pop up with Wu-Tang Forever every time Cliff came in the room. Right.
Yeah,
and Mary,
how about that?
I mean, it's Mary J. freaking Blige. That's like in the old days if it was Aretha Franklin who was now in your show.
Your hype playlist is like My Life and Enter the 36 Chambers.
Exactly. Right. So like
to get you through the day, to get your day started, to get your juice flowing.
People don't know. And all these other people are so like nonchalant. I'm a goofball. Right. Like I have to actually consciously tell myself, all right, be cool, Jack. Yeah, don't ask for any autographs. If I sign it, you're an executive producer on this show. Now, just calm down. That's Cliff. That's not Method Man right now. That's Cliff. Right? Don't ask for any Wu-Tang. Yeah.
Can I say too that well written with his character, and his kudos to him for being able to portray the character that he does. I mean,
let me say, brother,
both of them, him and Mary, and their characters and how far their career has gotten to the point that they can do that, and all these stereotypes and misconceptions of Meth and everything that he went through. He's playing an articulate black man.
Let me tell you, I say this on every interview where this comes up. Anybody who ever gets a chance to work with that man, work with him.
Mm-hmm.
Any show, he's an asset. Mary too, but she wasn't a surprise. She's been doing a bunch of stuff. I've seen her
the umbrella. Yeah,
and also whatchamacallit, the thing about the family. I forget the name of it now. Mudbone. Yes. Like she's got the chops. So I wasn't worried about her. And you do a little check-in. You never heard nobody ever said a bad word about Mary J. Blige. And if there was a bad word to say, trust me, I would have heard it. But but Cliff was a wild card to me because all I knew of him was, he plays in these silly movies sometimes and these action run and gun type things.
Right.
And when his name came across to play that character, my eyebrow went up for a minute. Why wouldn't it? He'd never done anything that would make you think, and we saw his audition and he came to play. Mm-hmm. And when he came to the set every day, and I say this almost the same way every time, so I apologize, but he was like a ray of freaking sunlight. Wow. Like he was such a complete professional, but also a basically good presence in the space. Yeah. Like you've heard every story. This is the thing I hate about the celebrity magazines and stuff like that. They only tell you about the bad stuff. Yeah. Nobody's going to write an article about when that
how human these people are.
But not like we expect them to be monsters and they're a decent person. I'm saying there's a person who's a monster who comes to the set, a devil, and there's a person who's an angel who comes to the set. There's someone who's just as bad as that person is. There are people who are that good when they come to the set. Cliff knew everybody's lines. He had, I'm not going to say what it was, but something bad happened to him right before work, like on his way to work, some stuff went down. And we were talking, me and him and a bunch of people, not just me and him, we're not like old friends or anything, but we were all talking about it. Like, damn, man, that's rough, whatever. As soon as that set call happened, bonk, that was gone.
Right.
If you did not know from the first conversation, if you came in 10 minutes later, you would have never known that he had that happen to him that day, right? He went through the whole day like, he was great, just great. And so was she. She was great. They were just never, it's hard to say it and not sound peevy, but I'm not that kind of a fan where I will lie. I would just be quiet and say, well, I don't want to talk about that.
But it's funny though, Jeff, from my perspective, I see three people who established themselves for years in their own craft, and they're all coming together to create such a awesome project as book 2. Yourself, what you've been through as an actor and as a writer and everything, what he's been through in the world of hip hop, where she's been through in the world of hip hop and all the stuff, and all of you come together. That's a great recipe right there. And
well, I got to give that to Courtney. Like, I know you're telling me, and I'm happy to hear it, but
she's definitely the chef.
She is a dynamo, man. That woman is running 4 shows, 5, I think, simultaneously. She's the head writer she was a head writer on Ghost, and I'm betting every script goes through her hands at some point on all of these shows.
Absolutely.
And no quality drop. The most successful TV series after Game of Thrones. And it's not a far second, it's a close second.
Right.
It's a very close second to Game of freaking Thrones. Okay. And the number 3 is like in another country. It's in another zip code from both of them. Right. That's one woman's brain, one woman's organization. And I'm not on her show anymore. I don't have to say any of this.
Right.
Like, I'm not trying to get a job from her. I'm not trying to go back on that team. I'm saying she's the truth. Like, be like Courtney. If you can be like anybody, be like Courtney. For real.
Definitely. So, all right, let's flip the script real quick, because there's a series of shows that I would, I wonder about, since you're in the realm of DC right now. Since you're currently working with DC, I got to ask, have you had any interest for, writing for Greg Berlanti for the Arrowverse series, or even the HBO Max series by any stretch?
The truth is, I have not met on the Green Lantern series because it was already in progress.
Right.
And at the same time that I'm doing my thing over here, they were already geared up writer-wise on the other side. So even if my name would have come up, there was no chance for it to come up.
But any of the projects,
I've met with their Berlanti people a lot. We keep dancing around, and I keep not getting the gig on it. But it's not like they don't like me. They keep calling me in to have chats, and we talk about stuff, and we always have a great time. And it's just not the right it's not the right time or place.
But you're still having chats, and that's nothing to sneeze about.
I'm not worried about it. And they, like, some things run their course. Like there's I would have loved to be on the Flash early on. But I feel like the Flash is winding down now, and I don't know what I could really contribute.
Thank
you. Like,
for saying that.
I'm not saying it's bad.
No, but I think they're getting to a point where we might see the beginning of the end.
Yeah,
that's what I'm feeling.
Every show has a life,
right?
So,
and this season was really awesome. Don't get it twisted, because they went back to the speedsters, and it was awesome.
Great.
But I still feel like they're writing it in a sense, in a direction where we're starting to revisit some of the old of like.
We're going to wrap this up soon. We're going to wrap
full circles coming.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah,
or at least some massive change that'll turn it into some other kind of show.
Absolutely.
But point being is that at this point, the Flash that I would want to write, like I have great ideas for, that time has passed.
Yeah.
So Arrow's not on the air anymore, so can't do anything with that. Batwoman, I'm not really a Bat fan in general, so it doesn't matter whether it's Batman or Batwoman. I'm like, meh. Nothing against anybody. I love everybody. It's a great show, right? Black Lightning is done, so there's no room over there.
Unfortunately,
we could have a whole show about whatever we feel about.
I'm just gonna put it like that.
Okay, but I mean, whether you feel about Black Lightning, when it was on, that was the blackest show that had ever been on television. That was the blackety black.
It was I called it the comic books version of New York Undercover.
No joke. That was the straight up blackest show in the history of blackness on television.
You ain't ever lied.
And I'm including Roots. Black Lightning was blacker than Roots.
I think it was so black that they couldn't have. You remember what Paul Mooney said on his Chappelle show when you have too much fun? Take it away.
Yeah, they take it away. That's so. Like I was like, come on now.
The amount of the talent that they brought in, the legendary talent that they brought in, the music selection.
Sure.
It was thank goodness still Netflix to at least have it on their platform for now.
Sure. And it's there. That's the point. It got made and it's there, which means
they had closure. And they had closure. So I'm at least happy about that. Yes.
And it ended. It didn't just stop. It ended.
I think we would have been on
all good.
Yes.
I like the Titans. I like the Doom Patrol.
Yeah.
I like that weird cartoon about Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy.
Oh, that is my favorite.
But that one I couldn't write. I can only appreciate it. I don't have the sense of humor for that. So, but yeah, I mean, I like all the stuff they're doing, and I definitely know that they got some stuff coming that I would not be allowed to talk about. But there's going to be some great shows coming up that I might take a run at if I'm available at that time.
That's what I have you for. I can always ask you to come back on.
Like come on and ask me, come back if I get on one of them.
You're dang right.
I actually do know what the Green Lantern show is going to be, but I can't say anything about it.
Guess what, watchers and listeners, you ain't telling because I don't want to be spoiled either. I'm looking forward to seeing Diggle. I'm looking forward to seeing Diggle do his thing. So
I'm neither confirming nor denying the presence of John Diggle in anything. I'm just saying. But I do know, and I think it's going to be very different than what I've seen people seem to expect, and it's
Awesome.
only in a good way. It's going to be different in an extremely good way. Like I think they got a very good angle, a very good take.
Awesome.
And I will be sitting down to watch that show.
Right.
Like, and I don't have to. Nobody's paying me to do it. I got plenty of things to do. So, but I'm definitely watching episode 1 of that Green Lantern show.
You ain't lying.
Holy crap!
To me, that's gonna be like Black Panther level for me.
Yeah,
I can't wait.
I mean, yeah, like that. Like
That's huge for me.
Yeah.
So
I love it.
I got a couple more questions for you, but first, as always, thank you for coming on the show again. First of all, I need to let you know that you're like, I think you're in the lead for most appearances on the show.
Well, let's keep that lead. I want to keep. If I got it, I'm holding on. I want to be the most guest.
I think mostly because I got some people who made 4 appearances, but you're officially the first to make 5, and I think a lot of it had to do with us going back to review Black Panther's Quest. So we came back on the show. So good job on it. A mug with your name is coming your way.
Thank you, brother. I'll take it.
But I got a couple questions I want to ask, and this one is a little bit of a deep one, but I know you're the right person to ask and talk about it. So, of course, we talked about it before the show. We're talking about it now. We've had some experience, some real experiences, and not so surprising things happen in 2020, as we talked in the beginning of this. It's now 2021, and the journey to make change in our country, and it's on a course of being slow paced at best. When it comes to Hollywood, as well as the comic book industry, let's even put that in. From your perspective, have you seen an increase in terms of representation and opportunity?
That's a thorny question.
That is a very thorny question.
I wish there was a simple answer.
Yeah.
The simple answer is right after the first blush of Black Lives Matter, there was a big flurry of activity to diversify, certainly in terms of adding Black people to staffs, and a big flurry of buying up of Black property, Black projects, Black focused projects. But as I predicted, because people forget, I've been doing this a minute, there have been flurries like this before.
Yeah.
And what happens is whatever caused the flurry dies down, where people aren't as energetic about it. Yeah. And then you find out who really feels that way, which there may be some new people. Like you may get some converts who come over to the right side of the fence, but nowhere near as many as you thought there were while the flurry was still happening. Because the flurry was all about, let's make sure everybody knows I'm not a racist or that. We don't want to get hit with any, you guys don't do this or you guys do that or whatever. Right. We don't want any of that. So now everybody's going to look, as soon as they swivel over here, they're going to see we got all these Black folks. Right. We bought all these Black shows. We got all these Black employees. But they know that eventually the spotlight's going to swivel away and then it's back to business as usual. Yeah. Or not, depending on the person. So I would say, yes, there are more people who have this in their minds now than there used to be. You're seeing more shows coming up with more diverse casts, not just with Black people, but just regular old, like the world is brown, shades of brown, whether you're in China or whether you're in Europe. Most white people are also brown. Right. That's what people forget about. Italians, brown. Spaniards, brown. Greeks, brown. All white. Okay, so the world is in shades of brown. All you have to do is not work against that and your show becomes diverse. Yeah. So my feeling's always been that racism is an active thing, diversity is a passive thing. It's not the opposite way where you have to be diverse. The world is diverse. So you're working hard to have it not look that way. Every time it doesn't look that way, you did that on purpose because you can just look out your window and see that it doesn't look like what you just said. Right. So you're doing that on purpose. So I think we definitely have a net gain of people on the team of the Angels now, but it's not nearly as big as people like to pretend. And you're still seeing sexism, all kinds of crazy sexist stuff.
Absolutely.
You're still seeing homo and transphobia, across the board. Like these things, I'm not going to say these things take time. I don't need to take time. I'm outraged and offended that it's taken this long to get this little bit of far.
And you, in your journey, especially, I mean, you've seen it.
Yeah, it's just stupid. It's just stupid. And then everybody's like, well, you got to understand. I'm like, I do understand. I get it. You don't want to. Yeah. That's it. That's what we all need to understand. That all these things are a result of choice. Right. People are making active choices every day. You could have a conversation about this dark-skinned Black woman not being as attractive as this light-skinned Black woman. I'm like, I'm sorry, yo, but you missed the bus on that one, because homegirl is you're stupid. That's the one over there, right? Well, because she's milk, she's dark chocolate, not milk chocolate. You can't handle it. That's on you, right? And that's a very specific thing, because Black women have to deal with that. The best actress may not get the part because she's not as light skinned as the actress who got the part. Nothing against whoever's getting these parts, because it's not a 1-to-1. But I'm saying the favor still goes towards the lighter hue.
Right.
It just does. People can say whatever they want about it, but it's an active choice to cast a darker skinned Black woman rather than a lighter skinned Black woman. So as soon as that stops being a choice, where it's just like best actress won for that part, then we can say we got over the hump. Right now, not over it, not even close.
You know what I would really want, Jeff? I want to look at In the Heat of the Night reruns and not think that it's a new series that just came out this year.
Oh my God. People been talking. This is the downside of my existence. I've been talking about that show more this year since Green Lantern than I have talked about that show in 15 years. Like,
I'm not joking. I it just popped. Do you know they run it on syndication every single time on cable, and you can't stop watching. And then I just like, even before I knew that we were going to be on, I was like, all right, I'll watch an episode. Oh, and there you are, by the way.
And he doesn't. It looks like that's my son. Like my prettier, nicer son
with the fade.
Oh, good Lord!
But even more, back. But even more, when you were acting in that show, it was like the narratives. It's just too relevant.
Yeah.
And it's much.
I don't know.
I love this show to death. It's one of the deepest shows that came out at the time, and it's still. It pains me because I'm enjoying this, but I'm also it's bittersweet. That how well the actor, all you guys did on that show, but also how deep that story is in each episode. It's just insane.
I mean, I definitely had a good time on it. I tried to stay friends with most of the guys that were on it. Well, I mean, we had some deaths, so we can't be friends. But you know, it was a time and a place. I'm amazed that it's still on the air and I still get fan mail. You know,
that's
I think
awesome.
Sometimes people are genuinely shocked, not just that I aged and got fat, but also like what I'm really like versus what Sweet is like. Right. And I'm like, I'm an actor, or I was an actor. There was a documentary about Geoff Thorne. That was Wilson Sweet. Right. But like, I'm sure I would get along great with Mr. Sweet, but him and me are not the same guy. Right.
And shame on you.
We could all be a little better. We could all be more like Sweet. Right. But I mean, like I said, I've been being asked about that show more. I think I might be asked about this show more this year than I was when I was on the show.
They played it so much. I'm not joking.
I mean, and
I'm on the East Coast too, by the way, as you know. So it's like,
people are like, I watched that show with my grandmother. I'm like, everybody watched that show with their grandmother. Like everybody's grandmother.
It's like 5 days away from being a subject in school.
No joke, right? And like, people don't even remember that Carol O'Connor was Archie Bunker. They're like, oh, that's the guy who played the chief. I'm like, oh dear God, he is literally rolling in his grave off of you saying.
But you know what? I think I would like to believe, and you know him more than I do, but I would like to believe that that's the way he wanted it to be, because I felt like it was his redemption.
Well, he took over the show, so I don't think more than Archie, but he had more control over the product. Archie, he was just an actor.
Right.
In that show, he was the head writer. He was the executive producer. He was the star. Like, that's his baby. So,
which is awesome, because it put him in such a light with fans of him. And nobody ever, canceled him or damned him for doing Archie Bunker. Right. Archie Bunker was what Archie Bunker was.
Right.
It's still even for me, I can still say that was an iconic character. It was meant to be what it was meant to be. But when it came to, and you understood the character, but you also understood that it was an actor of the character.
The thing with Archie, and it's a very good trick to pull off if you're a good enough writer.
Right.
Everybody in the audience is in on the joke.
Yeah.
Everybody in the show is in on the joke. Everybody knew Carol wasn't that guy.
Yeah.
Right. Like, he's playing it and you believe it, but he's playing it and you believe it.
Exactly.
So a show like that where there's a, like, I don't know if you can make a show like that in the modern times, because with the internet, everybody's trying to live backstage all the time.
Yep.
And if the celebrity gossip people wanted to make it look like he was really Archie Bunker in his real life, they could.
Yeah.
Right. They catch him mad at a restaurant one day, or he had a fight with a person who happened to be black.
Can you imagine?
Right.
We had that back in the day.
Right. But they would make a meal of that. Right.
Yeah.
When in reality, he's just having a fight with a guy who happens to be black. The headline would be, actor who plays character X is really a racist. He's even more racist in real life. Look at this shot we have of him yelling at this innocent black man. Never mind that innocent black man had just rammed his car into his car on purpose and was yelling at him in the street, and he was just yelling back. No, just look at this picture and look at his headline. Right. So I don't know that show could even get made now. I don't know how anyone would. I don't think anyone would be brave enough to try, to be honest with you, because all the smoke you would get.
If your name, if it's not comedy, your name's not Seth MacFarlane. Otherwise, it's probably not going to happen.
And also, Seth, he's lucky because his show started before all this, so it had a big enough fan base to go, yeah, we don't care.
I asked this question because I'm a huge. To me, Seth MacFarlane. Me personally, I can say this: Seth MacFarlane to me is the modern day Mel Brooks. To me, in a sense. Now, and I tell him, and I always tell myself, I'm like, how is he still allowed to get away with half the stuff that other people are getting?
But it's what happens with a lot of shows. It's like there's not a lot of heat on the show, but it's still successful because it's got a big enough fan base that they all still watch it. So as long as he doesn't drop those numbers, right? And those people aren't leaving at this point. It's like The Simpsons. I haven't watched The Simpsons in a decade. They're still making new Simpsons shows.
Absolutely.
It's still a hit show, right? They got enough Simpsons. They could just have a Simpsons network. And you wouldn't repeat an episode of The Simpsons for years if they just ran them, right? Okay, so that's a fan base that they can depend on,
right? And
they don't need me to be watching it. Like I said, I don't have anything against The Simpsons. I just checked out and didn't go back.
Right.
I'm not mad at them. I just stopped watching it for some reason.
Everybody, don't worry. Everybody did. It's just what it is.
No, everybody did it. Everybody did it. That's the point. They're still making new episodes. You know, those actors make $1 million more than an episode.
But I catch myself watching it like, I think like if I'm not watching a Family Guy episode or anything else, then I would go to The Simpsons because I know that they're there and it's like.
I don't know what the number is, but once you lock in that magic number of these are the people who watch the show, the only thing to make that show go off the air is the people making the show don't want to do it anymore. Right? Like, and like I said, the amount of money that just the actors make on that show, every actor on that show is making more than $1 million an episode. An episode. And how many do they do a year? And how many years have they been doing them? So if that's how much they're paying the workers, how much money does that?
And Disney wasted no time acquiring them too, by the way.
We want that Simpsons Monet. Right. That's right. Oh yeah, you take your little $1 million. We're gonna take that whole. I'm not kidding. Right? Like that's what it boils down to. So I'm amazed that Heat of the Night is still on the air. It's some facet. But I don't think you could get away with making. I don't think you can get away with making All in the Family now. People would just want to kill you.
Not at least for the next maybe few years at best. Well, we'll have to see.
I don't know if I'll live long enough to see that again. I think I'm only half joking. Like people are so in their stuff now that just joking about something could get somebody killed.
Yeah, this ideology is this generation ideology is ridiculous. Right. Like in some cases I do miss the 90s. For a lot of reasons.
Yeah, people could, and even with that, like, or even if everyone's in.
Not that was perfect by any stretch, but
it can even be like, I don't want you preaching to me about your left-wing craziness. I see what you're doing with Archie Bunker. I know what you're talking about. I know what you're trying to do. I'm going to kill all y'all.
Right.
Like, and I mean it. I'm not just woofing. Like, I might actually show up and try to do it.
Right.
You know, that didn't used to happen. So I don't know anyone's brave enough to try that. I don't know any actor who wants to put their neck out that way. Right. Like, it's sad. It's really sad.
It is. So what is next for you?
Can't tell you. Working on a project I can't tell you anything about.
Which is a great thing.
Yeah. I'm running Green Lantern until the middle of next year, and then my contract is up. Awesome. We'll see what they want to do. I didn't know that I was going to get the full 12 issues, where I was very happy to let them that they told me that. So we're going to run this arc out, and a whole bunch of crazy stuff about to pop off, starting with this week or next week's issue. We put the pedal down, and it doesn't come back up after this week, after next week. There's some people like, well, issues 3 and 4 were a little slow. And I'm like, okay, you might want to remember that rest stop I gave you, because here we go. But that, I've got a couple of things in the pipe from Marvel, a couple more things in the pipe with DC to see like if they want to do them, but a couple of them are pretty high profile, so I can't say what they are. I really like writing comics, but it really, if it starts to compete with my day job too much, then I'll have to limit what I do in the comic book space.
Yeah.
I'm about to drop 3 of my own independent comics, which probably on Comixology.
Yeah.
Which would be digital for those who watch and don't know what that is.
That's my everyday, all day.
Yeah. So those would be original to me. They're already, the issues are drawn. I've just got to make the deal with Comixology, basically. We've got some really great artists, some really fun stories, brand new characters. I got an all ages book, sort of a street crime book, and a sort of a cosmic book. Very diverse cast, and not. It's going to be fun. It's definitely going to be fun. Awesome. So there's that, and I'm doing season 2 of my podcast, the scripted podcast Dreamnasium. We're doing season 2 right now. I got all the scripts in my little inbox and making my little red line notes on them to make changes, and then they go back and make it.
Nice. Welcome to the world.
Well, this is the 2nd season. The last season was last year. You look it up, Dreamnasium. You'll enjoy it. It's all based on my short. It's all based on my short stories, my sci-fi and fantasy short stories. Full cast, fully executed audio drama.
Nice.
And they really kicked it out of the park. I'm the executive producer, which makes me the studio, basically. And it was popular enough that we were like, all right, let's do season 2. So we're doing season 2.
Fantastic.
Yeah, man.
Jeff, thank you ever so much. As always, let me tell you, man, it's just, it's my pleasure. I mean, just given the opportunity to meet people like you and be inspired by people like yourself, and especially people in our community, and to have you on the show, to finally get to see you after 5 years.
Well, it'll be easier now.
It'll be much easier now. Thank you, technology.
Well, I'll tell you what, when you want to come back, like there's a bunch of stuff's about to pop off. You want to come back in a couple of months and discuss Green Lantern, I'm happy to do it.
Absolutely. Look, the more I'm reading, the more things come up. I'm going to email you and hopefully I won't have to curse you out.
Well, what is your email? Say, what have you done to the Green Lantern Corps? I'll tell you what, you get back to me after issue 7.
Oh, okay. Challenge is something. Okay.
I mean, a challenge. It might be something.
Are we still going to be friends after this? Are we still going to be cool after this? I'm just saying.
Depends on how you feel about Green Lantern.
There you go. You putting too much power in the Green Lantern Corps.
Well, I mean, right now we only got 2 active Green Lanterns, right? We got Hal and we got Joe. And Hal's not on the page right now. He's off doing something, whatever he's doing.
Right.
And Joe's holding it down by herself. So I don't know what's going to be going on by issue 7.
All right.
I mean, I do, but.
Well, I already got it on subscribe on Comixology, so no doubt I got you covered. I'm gonna check it out.
Sweet.
We'll revisit that and everything else that you got going on as well. Jeff, thank you again. But just from the bottom of my heart, thank you. I mean, since the day we met in San Diego Comic-Con, and I just love the road that you've been going into, and keep inspiring myself and keep inspiring other people out there, especially in our community, because we got a lot of people out there who need to be inspired by, your road and your journey.
Well, go buy Green Lantern, y'all. It stars a black man and a black woman.
Boom, boom.
Doing cosmic Star Wars type stuff.
How can you not love that?
I don't know if you're going to find that anywhere else. You might as well go buy it from me. I don't make any money. I'm already paid. I'm not getting anything out of it, but go buy the book. You'll enjoy it. It's fun.
Absolutely. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this very special episode of Talk Time Live Exclusive. On behalf of myself and Geoff Thorne, all I gotta say is learn to let go, live life, and love all things anime, comics, movies, and games. This is ACMG Presents Talk Time Live. We are out of here. Take care.